And welcome in to the final regular season edition, pour one out, of Vikings Vent Line here on Purple Daily. Kind of a wild back and forth game. And ordinarily we would do a deep dive into the game, but because the game was irrelevant, we're really just going to gloss past it and talk about the future of the Vikings. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff. This is the most interactive show in Minnesota sports. It's Vikings Vent Line, part of the Purple Daily umbrella of Vikings discussions. If you want to join the show, send us an email, vikingsventline@gmail.com, and Declan will line up a bunch of guests to jump on the show with us. And if you enjoy Vikings Vent Line, please remember Purple Daily is 7 days a week on YouTube and podcasts. You can find us anywhere you find your favorite podcast. You can find other Score North shows as well at scorenorth.com. And Vikings Vent Line is powered, as always, by Corona Hard Seltzer Spiked Sparkling Water with natural flavors, imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to peel the curtain back here. Declan Goff went to like 5 different liquor stores, and Corona Hard Seltzer is so popular over the holidays. They were sold out, and so he had to grab an empty can from his trash/recycling just to give it some screen time here on Purple Daily. So
hey, that means people are consuming Corona Hard Seltzers at an insane rate. And after this Viking season, we'll need multiple Corona Hard Seltzers as we get ready for the next season and the NFL draft. So keep drinking the Corona Hard Seltzers. Thank you to Corona Hard Seltzer.
Amen. Amen. All right, boys, let's do this. I think this is a great jumping off point for, I'm guessing, the next several weeks of discussions on Purple Daily. How to fix the Minnesota Vikings and put them into contention once again in 2021 and beyond. And not just 9-7 contention, not just division contention, but Super Bowl contention is what we're talking about on this show. And so let's go around the room real quick. We'll start with Judd. We'll just give our quick thoughts on just high level, most important things to look at going into the offseason, which starts tomorrow. And then we want to devote the rest of the show to you guys, Vikings fans. And we don't want to, I mean, if you want to throw a take in about today's game, that's fine. But let's keep it mostly to, what do you think the Vikings should do? Most important, second most important, third most important things this offseason to get back into immediate Super Bowl contention, if possible. Judd, we'll start with you. What's going on?
Not too much. I do have one important question off today's game. How is it when you want the officials to screw you, they don't? And the rest of the time they screw you? Like the Lions got nothing today.
That was pretty bad.
That roughing the passer call is terrible.
That was really bad.
Marvin Jones caught that football. I mean, my God.
It was really bad.
The most important thing, if we're going to fix the Vikings and where this conversation, I think, is going to take a lot of twists and turns, is I'm almost certain I know what the Vikings are going to do in anticipation of saying that they believe that they're fixed for 2021. They're going to bank on guys defensively coming back. They're going to say that they're offense, and they'll be proven correct sort of statistically, is absolutely fine. My belief, though, is if you want to become a Super Bowl team in 2021 and going forward from there, and you are truly looking at what the other innovative, smart teams are doing, that you have a lot of work to do, which I think we now throw around the term rebuild. It's become cliche. So I don't like that word now, because it's just sort of this catch-all of, well, get terrible and then get good. And I appreciate that path, but I think it's become almost a lazy term. So what I would say is the term that the Vikings should be observing here, and I don't think that they are yet, is they should be observing the path that the successful franchises seem to be taking now. So not going back and checking out what Bill Walsh did in the 80s or what Chuck Noll did in Pittsburgh with the steel curtain. Did you see that? I'm talking about, what are teams now that are finding success? What are they doing to take those steps? And I believe if that's going to be the conversation, simply saying, well, guys are coming back, is probably not enough, because Phil, we've talked about this, okay? Until Mike Zimmer is no longer the coach here, this team is going to be built around and predicated on its defense being absolutely awesome and the offense being good, but not the greater part. But as we've discussed, the problem with that formula is that counts on 11 guys playing absolutely lights out almost every week. Like, they can have a bad game or two, but not a lot. So I really believe that if we're talking about fixing the Vikings and turning them not into a 10 or 11 win team, but an actual Super Bowl team that is not just a playoff contender, but then takes the next step and runs the table to a championship, There is a lot of different thought processes that need to take place, and there's a lot of work that needs to take place. And I will go on record right now as saying I don't think Spielman and Zimmer are going to see that. I think they're going to say 2020 was a weird pandemic impacted season, and that they'll come back and be fine with their guys back. I mean, as Mike said after the Saints debacle, Phil, I don't my guys. I need my guys. So in his mind, if he has his guys, he's going to be fine.
Yeah, I think so. Where I'm at here, I'm trying to zoom out as much as possible because there's so many things to get into for this offseason. I think the most important thing to consider is when you get some of these good veteran defensive players back, Danielle Hunter, Michael Pierce, people kind of forget Eric Kendricks. Like the Vikings went off a cliff in December, and that coincided with Eric Kendricks missing games as well. So do they win an extra game or two and sneak into the playoffs if Eric Kendricks doesn't miss basically the whole month of December? So you get these guys back, and your cornerbacks get a year older. I think we all figure Cam Dantzler is going to be your number one cornerback going into next season. Jeff Gladney showed some signs. So you could make a very strong case that by just young guys getting a little older, another year in the system, and then Danielle Hunter coming back from injury, Michael Pierce, Eric Kendricks, that this becomes a fringe top 10 defense again, just by flipping on the light switch. And so you have to balance, are those guys coming back? Is that the magic elixir? And then you draft for need in the first round, and maybe you draft an offensive lineman that helps you immediately in 2021. And then you do some restructuring of your salary cap. You say goodbye to Kyle Rudolph. You figure out what to do with Riley Reif's big cap number. Maybe you can get out from underneath $8 million of Anthony Barr's contract. Like there's things you can do to free up some money. Can you go get an impact free agent of some kind? Are those things going to put you into Super Bowl contention, or are those things going to put you into wild card contention and maybe win a playoff game contention? That's what I'm trying to figure out this offseason is like, are the bones there and they just have to add some of these things back to win a Super Bowl? Or is it the bones and the DNA of a really good 10-6 team if you get these things back and you're just headed down the same path as you've always headed down, save for like the once every 10-year appearance in the NFC Championship game? I tend to lean toward you're going down a path schematically and personnel-wise that is really good for contending for a wild card spot and maybe even a 10-6 record, but you're not just going to get these guys back and automatically be in the mix with the Chiefs and with some of these other top teams in the NFL. Dex, what do you think?
I mean, the easy answer is to say, yeah, you'll get your guys back on defense, maybe go get an offensive guard or two. I mean, and you plug and play there. But I mean, we talked about before that the defense needs every working piece in order to be successful. And also Zimmer's defenses have been gashed in big games, like in the NFC Championship game. And I know fans don't want to see this, and he had a good year, but until you change your quarterback, until you change your offensive philosophy too, instead of it being a run-first team, I think you're always going to be stuck perpetually in being that 9-7, 10-6, wild card or bust kind of team. And until they actually get a quarterback that is mobile and that is has awareness and is able to change the game per se, like I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's obviously one of the top 15 quarterbacks in the world. We all know that, but I've seen enough to say he's not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And I've yet to really see a case where he can pull out a Joe Flacco or an Eli Manning like running him. And I think this season shows it. I mean, he wasn't able to do that. So until they change that quarterback and that philosophy, I have a tough time really believing that this team can be a Super Bowl. And this was a guy who was sipping the Kool-Aid in the preseason.
And see what a lot of people would say, and we'll yield to Vikings fans here for the rest of the show. But what a lot of people would say is, dude, this guy was lights out from the bye week going forward. He just ended the season against the Lions. I get it. And everyone had tea times, but like he just put up 400 yards without Dalvin Cook. And people are going to say, what do you mean he can't win a Super Bowl? Get this guy a top 10 defense and get him some actual good offensive linemen, and he absolutely can win a Super Bowl. And then the question becomes, okay, let's go down that path. How do you get a top 10 defense? And then how do you get the 2 or 3 extra offensive linemen needed when you only have one pick in the first 2 rounds and you only have a limited amount of salary cap space to spend on those things? Like that's the conundrum.
And do you put a priority on featuring that quarterback to make him as successful as possible? And the answer right now is no, you don't. You believe in, I don't care what the ultimate stats are. If you watch the Vikings on a weekly basis, you know that offensively the head coach puts a priority on the run game, and that's his baby. And look, I mean, this is all going down a path that we can see coming crystal clear, right? I mean, in a year or two, Jefferson, rightfully so, is going to say, what are we doing here? Which is what Diggs said, which is the accurate thing. So this to me now goes well beyond Kirk Cousins and Kirk Cousins' play. This now is a question about philosophically, do you look at the position at which you're paying a guy a ton and say, we need to feature him? Or do you look and say, I need to tolerate him? And right now, what Mike has said when it comes to everybody but Teddy is, I need to tolerate him. And that is not a way to operate in 2020, 21 in this league. It doesn't work that way. Look, 2014 now, Phil and Dex, is a long time ago. And Mike was hired at that time to do his thing defensively. I would argue that the game and that the league has shifted. And it's not Mike's fault, but he is also not the type to sit down and say, I have to adjust and adapt and change my philosophy. His philosophy is ingrained, and I don't see it changing. And yes, it can get you in the playoffs, but if we're talking about the ultimate goal of this show, which is a Super Bowl championship, I don't see how the formula works.
Colonel KFC chimes in the YouTube comment section here. Where's Kirk's credit for Jefferson's production? Yes, Kirk deserves some credit for Justin Jefferson. I would also argue that Justin Jefferson's probably elevating Kirk Cousins quite a bit too. So, but both guys are benefiting from having each other, especially the second half of the season. Justin Jefferson, huge shout out. He becomes, in the Super Bowl era, the top rookie wide receiver in NFL history in terms of yardage. And he basically didn't get any targets the first 2 weeks.
And he played about 14 games
or something.
He played like 14 games.
Yeah.
It's incredible. He's incredible.
It's amazing. So Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff, we're sitting here. We are sipping on Corona Hard Seltzer, or at least Declan is smashing empty cans against his forehead. And we're recapping a Viking season, but mostly looking ahead to 2021 and beyond, with the mission statement being Super Bowl. How do you get back into Super Bowl contention? And we're going to kick off the how to fix the Vikings discussions today, right here on Ventline. And we just want to spend the rest of the show getting your guys' thoughts. We have a full green room full of Vikings fans, and we don't really care about like bad officiating against the Lions today. We just want to talk about your thoughts on how to get this team back in the mix. So, Dex, who do we got first?
Let's start off with Carter. Carter, you're on Vikings Vent Line, my man.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah. What's up, Carter?
So we can get rid of Kyle Rudolph now, right?
Holy cow. Yeah, Conklin and Irv Smith.
It just seems like they're way more productive on being in the passing game. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. I had food in front of me. I didn't care about the game at all. I just wanted to see what we could do. Jefferson is an absolute stud. We're not going to be able to pay him if we keep Kirk Cousins at all.
Jefferson?
Yeah.
That's 5 years, though.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Be here by then. So
if Spielman is, we might.
No. What you should focus on and be concerned about is long before that contract is done, that Jefferson does what Diggs did, which is go to Spielman and Zim and say, what are you guys doing here? And they're going to say, we're running the football, Justin. And Justin's going to say, that's not my specialty, guys. So I'd be far more concerned about him being disgruntled about how the Vikings run their offense than him bolting because of Kirk.
Carter, what position would you look to draft in the first round?
I would be looking at another safety. I know I'm not all for the defensive because it's an offensive league, but safety is one of the most important positions on defense. Mm-hmm. And with Smith only having maybe another year or two left in his belt, and Harrison's going to be gone after this with the franchise tag, they're not going to have anybody in depth up there.
Yeah, by the way, and Carter, thanks for leading us off here on Vikings Frontline. Anthony Harris, I think the narrative started, a year ago. The conversation was, boy, are they going to franchise him or maybe trade him for like a second-round pick or something? Because he was one of the best safeties in the NFL last year.
Bad year.
Oof, what a bad year for him. There's no way he comes back. So, all right, Dex, who do we got next year as we look to fix the Vikings going into 2021?
Let's go to a loyal listener, Ben in Florida. Ben, what's going on, man?
All right, guys. Here's what I have. All right. after this game, after the press conference is over, Mike Zimmer's going to go in. He's going to have a meeting with the Wills, and the analytics department is going to be in that meeting. Okay, and the analytics department is going to lay down all of the offensive faults that have happened based on Mike Zimmer's philosophy, and they're going to point up all the teams that are in the playoffs or at the top seed of the NFC and how they run their offense. And the analytics department is going to say, Mike, you can't run an offense this way if you want to be a Super Bowl contender. We think we can win with Kirk Cousins. We really do. We really think we can. We have this awesome receiver, Justin Jefferson. We got this other awesome receiver in Adam Thielen. We have 2 good tight ends. We need to go get a guard in free agency. We have a great running game, great running back. We got this great offense to put up 35 points a game. Mike, we can't do this running thing anymore. And if Zimmer objects to that, then the Wills need to say, Mike, we're going to have to send you packing on Black Monday because this is not how we're going to win anymore. That's how the Vikings that's how the Vikings get the Super Bowl contender. The analytics department Mike Zimmer needs to accept analytics because if he doesn't, the Wills need to send him packing. This because this is not a simple of get guys healthy. We need to be more efficient on offense because he can scheme them to be average on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Average defense wins and can win, but they're too talented on offense to be 15th in scoring. They're just way too talented. So this is we need analytics, Mike. We need analytics.
What's funny is that like the Vikings actually are very much behind the scenes, all in on analytics and gathering data. But from various reports and different accounts that we've heard from behind the scenes, the information isn't always accepted and disseminated, shall we say, in the way that maybe other teams like the Ravens might use the same information.
And Ben, I think that the Wills and I think the Vikings have had the exact meeting that you're talking about with Zim the past couple of years. And I think that they've accepted that he basically has said, I'll adjust and do some, but not all. So, yeah, I think that you're right. Unfortunately, I think the Wills had their opportunity to tell Mike, if you don't adjust to what we think is the future of football, you're gone. That's a conversation that took place and they didn't do it. And so now you're sort of stuck here. And don't forget too, the contract extension, Ben, starts next year. Okay. Mm-hmm. Next year. They ain't firing a guy during a pandemic with now 3 years left, maybe 2 years, but the contract extension starts next season. You got 3 years. You ain't starting to pay him and then bring in an entirely new staff. That's expensive.
Also, it's really easy. Like the argument for Zimmer is so easy. He said, hey, man, we went 7-9 despite all these crazy things that happened in a pandemic year. We drafted 15 rookies. I lost a bunch of my best defensive players, and we started 1-5 because the quarterback threw 11 interceptions in the first month and a half, and we still almost made the playoffs. Like his argument for staying is pretty ironclad. So I think there's almost a 0% chance that Mike Zimmer gets fired.
Yeah, but he's a coach that raises a team's floor, but I just feel like over the last 7 years they haven't reached their ceiling as often as they should.
For sure.
13-3 was 2017 was awesome, but they haven't had a 11-win season or 12-win season since, despite having pretty good players on the roster.
Yeah.
So
Ben, hey man, we appreciate your insight. You're one of our best callers here on Vikings Vent Line, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon. All right.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, real quick, you guys, I want to just address this comment from Matthew on the screen here. This is from our YouTube page, youtube.com/Purple Daily Podcast. And he's referring to Deshaun Watson here. I believe Deshaun Watson is a perfect example of how bad it can be if you draft a quarterback. If you draft a top quarterback, you can't get to 5 wins. I just want to because we're going to have all these discussions about if one of those stud quarterbacks is available, if a Zach Wilson or a Justin Fields is sitting there, should you go for the rookie contract young quarterback? And I just want to say that the Vikings have been so much better and more competent as a franchise when it comes to roster building. I don't think you can put them in the same sentence as the Texans in this case, and they've just eroded their roster, or the Jets or the Browns, and say, well, look what happens if you whiff on a quarterback, or if you draft a guy and then you don't build. Like the Vikings have shown for years, basically ever since Rick Spielman took over influence in the front office, that they can put a competitive roster on the field. And the biggest question mark up until Kirk Cousins, down the stretch this year has played really well. The biggest question has been, is there a long-term top 10 answer at quarterback to put with the really good roster. And when they find those guys like Brett Favre in 2009, or the way that Case Keenum was schemed up in 2017, they can go far. So I just like, what I don't want to hear is, well, I mean, look at the Jets. You whiff on Sam Darnold. Okay, the Vikings whiffed on Tavares Jackson and Christian Ponder, and Teddy Bridgewater blew his knee out after 2 years. None of those shipwrecked the franchise because they're great at building rosters.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there in the discussion about drafting a quarterback.
But I think that Rick stays away now from drafting a QB because his fear is that he whiffs again and then he's gone. So I think Kirk is coming back because Kirk is good. Kirk's not bad. But my bigger problem now with Kirk, though, is again, examining your approach to the sport of football right now. Does Kirk Cousins play the style of game that is going to win you a Super Bowl if you do not give him an offensive line that's damn near perfect? The answer is no. So, like, I mean, the Vikings need to sit down and have deep internal kumbaya philosophical discussions. Like, this is a how do we run football ops? And I think they've got some of it right. But I also think that now, when it comes to quarterback, when it comes to reliance on defense, they're not adjusting. This in some ways is what happened to the Twins. It really is, guys. It really is, right? The Twins were incredibly well. The Twins way, Terry Ryan, unbelievable. Look at what he does. Look at what he does. But they didn't turn the corner. They didn't. Everybody else turned and went off on their own and said, no, here's how we're doing it now. And the Twins were like, oh, no, this is not how we do it. So I do think the Vikings need to look long and hard internally at how they approach things and also say, since we hired Mike in 2014, Phil, what's changed? A lot has. Okay, have we changed? Are we adapting with it, or are we trying to say we're not going there? Because that is not, to say we're not going there is not an answer that's going to work. It's going to bite you right in the butt.
Yeah. Also worth noting here, and Nuge1717 on YouTube says Kirk doesn't suck, but he's not the answer. Yeah. And I think it's like we're probably guilty of this. This Kirk Cousins discussion is not really a black and white discussion. It's a shades of gray. If there was no salary cap and you could just spend as much money as you wanted, well, then you would be able to potentially eat that Cousins money and also add in free agency to your offensive line and defensive line. But the problem is you're all playing within this cap structure. And so even though the going rate, quote unquote, for a franchise quarterback is about what Cousins makes, is he good enough to overcome all these other things you have to fix? You have to weigh that. And then you have to weigh, if the answer is no, and I think the answer is no, meaning like he can't overcome a bad defense, he can't overcome an offensive line because he's not mobile enough, right? Do you have enough resources in draft capital and in cap space to fix those things to put him in the best spot to potentially win you a Super Bowl? And like that's going to be their entire offseason trying to figure out that equation. Dex, who do we got next here on Vikings Vent Line? How to fix the Vikings edition.
All right. We got loyal listener Bob, who I believe is in his hot tub right now with his Vikings flag in the background. Bob, do you have us?
Yeah, baby.
Bob, you son of a bitch, Bob.
Yes.
Bob,
Finally,
I just have one question. Just one question for you, okay? Are you clothed underneath that water?
Oh, yeah, I got my army. I don't go in. I don't go on my birthday suit. No way. Can't do it. Gotta have undercover. Hey.
So how would you go about fixing the Vikings, getting them back into Super Bowl contention when you were calling in during the 13-3 season, the run to the NFC Championship game? How do we get this team back to that point?
Here's how. Get a new offensive coordinator and act like the Buffalo Bills today. When they were down 7-3 in the second quarter with about 9 minutes left, on an 8-play drive that they ran out of the shotgun 6 times, they went right down the field, passed 8 times. Now they're up 14-3. 2 series later, a punt return for a touchdown. Bills are up 21-3. The following series, and this is how you fix the Vikings. In an offensively heavily weighted league where you win Super Bowls by outscoring your opponents. not by fielding a defense like they used to in Metropolitan Stadium, but by scoring 50 or 60. Who knows? So the Bills are up 21-3. The following drive, he throws a 50-yard bomb to ice the game and get the second seed. Now they're up 28-3. Game over. Bills are the second seed. That is how you approach a season next year to prepare your team to win a Super Bowl. Win it with your offense, not your defense, Zimmer. I'm sorry. That's how you win it.
Mm-hmm.
Which proves again that Stefon Diggs was right.
Yeah.
You might not approve of how he went about his business, but Stefon Diggs was exactly correct. What's the drink there, Bob?
He's the leading receiver in the league. He's only the leading receiver in the league. I mean,
what's
what
the
more
drink,
can you
Bob?
ask from the guy?
Bob,
What's in your glass? What's in the glass?
What are you
I'm
sipping on?
starting the day off with a Canadian lager Moosehead.
Oh,
yeah.
Moosehead. Oh, yeah.
Good
Never
stuff.
Moosehead,
Yeah.
haven't you? You guys are near Canada. You're a hell of a lot closer than I am to Canada.
Oh yeah.
Then
Yeah.
maybe the nightcap will be a Heineken. So, I can't drink those hard seltzers. I'm not into it.
We'll get you indoctrined. If the Vikings
We'll
make a
get you there,
Super
Bob.
Bowl run,
Wait.
we'll get you to pour some Corona Hard Seltzer over your head in the hot tub.
Look, I think that if we just throw the ball more on first down, out of the shotgun, open up the offense, and try to outscore a winning team, when we're playing a winning team, throw the ball more on first down, throw some seam routes, go deep on first down, just open up the offense. I mean, over the last 10 years, this team has been so conservative and predictable. I couldn't watch them this year. I didn't watch them this year. That's why I watched the Bills game. Who even won the Vikings game today? I don't even know. I follow you guys.
The referees actually won the Vikings game today. They were great.
I mean, it didn't matter, but I'll take a win if we did win. Did we win?
Yeah. The loss
right,
would have been
but-
nice for draft positioning, Bob. I'm gonna.
Here's to a win.
There you go.
There it is.
Appreciate it, Bob.
You know what's funny? And Bob, we love you, man. Thanks for chiming in from your hot tub. We'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, don't be a stranger.
Guys.
You
All right,
too.
happy New Year to Bob in Pennsylvania, Bob in the hot tub. The amazing thing is, I think, Judd, you were just making this point. So we're 3 years into the Kirk Cousins experiment. Kirk was brought in to take a team that went to the NFC Championship game and elevate them to a Super Bowl level. In fairness to Kirk, now that we're into year 3 here, the team that he took over and sat in the cockpit, the plane full of players, that team is no longer in existence. That defense is no longer number one. It's no longer top half. You could argue that the offensive weapons are probably just the same, if not better, with healthy Dalvin Cook for the most part. But they've always treated him like a Brad Johnson type in the way that they scheme. They've always treated him like they treated with Brad Childress, some of those non-Brett Favre quarterbacks, right? Where it's like, all right, we're just going to go in and, we know you can make some throws, but we're going to, and the only time they ever really empowered Kirk, and really you could even say like in Mike Zimmer's tenure as a head coach, he never empowered Bridgewater fully because they were catering to Peterson and defense for a long time. That the only time they ever really said, all right, we're going to give Kirk the keys and we're going to let Kirk cook was John DeFilippo, first half of the season, 2018. Yep. And they were throwing the ball more than almost any team in the NFL with mixed results, but it was first year in a system, right? Yep. And Mike Zimmer was so uncomfortable with that offensive approach. He fired DeFilippo in the middle of the season.
Didn't run enough. But here's the question that we don't know the answer to. If you empower Kirk for 16 games, what do you get?
We don't know.
What do you? But that's the point is
we don't know.
And what Mike sees is he sees the snippet in big games of Kirk being empowered where Kirk fails, and he says no. I mean, Kevin Stefanski ultimately did what Kubiak suggested, I think, from a play calling standpoint, or a schematic standpoint. But make no mistake, Zimmer was in charge of how Stefanski ran the offense in 2019. So we get to the start of this year, the first 6 games, right? And it's now Kubiak's show. And I think Gary spent those first 6 games basically calling plays like Gary likes to. And they were 1-5. And they got to the bye week, and Mike said, Coobs, we run the ball here. That's our specialty. Our best dish here at the Viking restaurant is run the ball with Dalvin Cook. And so we don't know, but what's scary about how much they pay Kirk and should, but don't rely on Kirk, is indications are that when the head coach has turned him loose in the head coach's mind, he has failed him.
And this is where, like,
and I don't know.
My personal opinion is that when put in that spot where, all right, dude, you're the guy, you're the leader, and everything's going to revolve around you in the biggest spots, I think he has a better chance now in year 3 going into year 4 of it would be kind of like year 2 going into year 3 of a similar system, right? I would trust him more than I did a couple of years ago, but I still don't think it results in all of a sudden he becomes a top 5 quarterback and the Vikings win a Super Bowl. But you can't, whatever you do, you can't just run it back with all the same characters next year. What I would look to try, if you're going to say, listen, Spielman, Zimmer, Cousins, all you guys are coming back, and I think that's what's going to happen. I would look to take the training wheels off of Kirk. Now that you have Jefferson and Thielen and a couple of pass catching tight ends, I would look to bolster offensive line pass blocking in the offseason. I would probably not be adding any defensive players in free agency unless it was like veteran minimum deals, because I'm looking to bolster my protection of Kirk if I'm going to run this thing back in 2021. First round pick as an offensive lineman, if that's the case. And any cap space I have is probably devoted to an offensive lineman.
Speaking of, and this is potentially reckless speculation as it gets, but it's from Schefter. Did you guys see the tweet today that said there is an expectation that the Jets are going to make a substantial offseason move, including the potential of shopping the second overall pick?
I did not see this.
And I will tell you, gentlemen, right now that there is a certain Pro Bowl coming off a neck problem, Pro Bowl defensive end who's going to walk into the offices here, I think shortly in Egan, and say, I want Kirk money. And the Vikings are going to say, Dayle, we can't pay that right now. All I'm saying is that there was a certain show in this town that a few weeks back speculated on this and sort of shot it down as if to say, nah, no chance. There is a chance. Because if you start a package with your first round pick, Dayle Hunter, probably have to be juicier too. But I'm just saying that second overall pick might be there.
So what would you do with it? What would you, if you called the Jets?
Well, that's
and by the way, Schefter's not just not just waking up on a Sunday morning and reading the tea leaves like.
Well, that's what we do, Phil.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't Schefter do that?
But like, if the Jets were interested in one of the great pass rushers of this era and whatever else it would take, I suppose it kind of depends on what the other offers are. But it's probably your first round pick and Dayle Hunter, right, and maybe a future. Are you trading up? You're only doing that for a quarterback, right? Correct. You're only doing that for like Justin Fields. You're not going to do it for an offensive lineman, I don't think. I think you're just waiting for the draft to fall to you.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I love it. Oh,
yes,
we're going to unpack all this stuff all week.
Oh,
I don't think the people who run the Vikings could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Who's next? Who's next on Vikings Vent Line? Fix the Vikings edition.
Let's go to Chanix. Chanix, you're back on Vent Line. What's going on, dude?
Happy New Year, everyone.
You too, Chanix.
So I was basically gonna be talking about like all the stuff you were talking about like if we're gonna ever trade down, especially since we don't have a second pick, and what are we basically gonna do? But the reality of it is we're gonna have all 3 of them back. The trifecta, they're all gonna come back. And if that's the problem, I think we definitely need to do what Phil is saying. We need to like fix the O-line for at least like shut up all the people who's like, oh, it's an O-line fault. It's not Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a savior of 4th down, man. So it's not his fault. So if that's the case, I think we should try our best to not spend so much money and sign all these people and tried our very best to just save Kirk and try to maintain his spot. But at the same time, have Rick also think really hard, because beside Teddy, he hasn't really signed like a quarterback or not draft a quarterback yet. So someone to just have behind, just to good to have for Cousins, not to say replace Cousins, but just to say, let's build a good quarterback like how Green Bay did it.
What's your problem with Sean Mannion? You got
I never see him play.
what do you
I don't
mean?
mean I'm not
Man, what about Browning or the Nate Stanley? Come on.
Yeah,
Right.
give me
I hear
that
he's great.
give me the Iowa quarterback. There we go.
right, all those guys. But like the Browns, I haven't seen any of them play. So, but
No,
we
no,
need
Vikings.
to think. We need to think of a future, and with our caps and all that problems, like we can't. We need to really think about how we're going to spend our money to make it work for next year, because clearly they're very conservative. Clearly they don't really. They're all looking for their job, and that's true. But their job should also be looking towards. We need a Super Bowl for our team, not just for our team, but for the fans, for all the people who are venting for the last 2 weeks, who are literally crying and anger and all that. That's who they should be thinking of. But I get it. It's also your job.
Yeah.
But it's also very easy to blame all these other things. So, yeah.
Chanix, thanks for coming on, man, and thanks for all your takes all season. We
Yep.
appreciate it.
See you, Chanix.
Been a regular all season.
Hey, you guys, to make it very clear, we are not all blaming Kirk here. Like, Kirk is a linchpin. He is the QB. So we're going to talk about him a lot.
I blame him for the 1-5 start.
But
I mean, let's not forget about that.
I started this show by saying the Vikings need to internally, as a franchise, examine their entire philosophy towards football. Like, that's not just the quarterback. They need to examine if the blueprint that they have a blueprint. I mean, we all have it too. They need to decide if that is the correct blueprint to try and win a Super Bowl now, not in 75, not in 85, because it was back then. But we continue to get the comments that I see about Cousins, and you're blaming Cousins. Look, Cousins is a discussion point. He has to be. He makes a ton, and he plays arguably the most important position in all of sports. But at least speaking for myself, I am saying this franchise needs to do a deep dive into how they run things.
Hey,
completely.
To your point here, DJ Duddy chimes in on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Why does Adam Thielen have so little yards? Because the Vikings heading into today's game had the 5th fewest pass attempts of any team in the NFL.
Yep.
They don't throw the ball as often as other teams do, and so that means fewer chances.
And they're not balanced. That's very true, Phil.
And they've been leaning,
Exactly
I think
right.
rightfully so, much more toward Justin Jefferson in the second half of the season. So Thielen wound up, I think he's going to wind up leading the NFL in touchdown catches. I'd have to go look at the latest after today, but you know, they just like it's a game of chance. There's 100 more targets to go around with the Chiefs because they're throwing the ball more because they have Patrick Mahomes and they're set. Historically, Andy Reid has always, even to a fault, has leaned towards throwing the ball over running the ball. Even back with his Donovan McNabb Eagles offenses in the early 2000s. But
what's the thing that coaches have harped on constantly in this sport, right? It's balance, right? We got to be balanced. The Vikings offensively are not. They approach the sport as if they have a quarterback who's probably in the bottom third of the league payroll wise. Mm-hmm. Like if you are a Cousins fan, you should not be pleased. There is no way that if you sat Kirk down and just said, okay, off the record, are you happy? He would say no, and he shouldn't be. This team cannot decide. It's got the bright, shiny car, but it doesn't drive it.
Yeah.
But the balance thing, like when you look at the statistics, they are not a balanced team offensively, and they really aren't when it matters. And that is a big deal. That is going to hold you back in key games. And we've seen it.
Yeah. And you know what? If we're going to do an in fairness to Kirk section of discussions this offseason, in fairness to Kirk, if I'm Kirk and I get a chance to air my grievances to the front office and the coaching staff, if there's like a 2020 exit interview, you know, what went right, what went wrong, and let me express my thoughts, I would say, why are Drew Samia and Dakota Dozier key cogs in protecting pressure up the middle when I'm trying to drop back? Guys, I'm not Russell Wilson. I'm not Lamar Jackson. Listen, I was more mobile this year than I was maybe last year or at any point. I was scooting around, gaining 5 yards and first downs, but I'm not going to be able to outrun up the middle pressure. And so you better get an actual NFL player to play left guard and right guard. And by the way, Garrett Bradbury took some steps forward this season, but man, that guy is still bad at pass protection overall.
Which is a big deal for Kirk.
Yeah, like
you're just a little bit of a problem.
So if I'm Kirk, like in fairness to Kirk, if he doesn't have those things as prerequisites, he's not going to be able to perform at his best. And of course, the Vikings, despite these things, still put up really good numbers offensively. And I think what we're saying is, great, you can rebuild the defense to some extent, but you should be doing everything you can to maximize the offensive talent you have right now. And it's like they're restricting how far the offense can go by their antiquated schemes and the fact that they run the ball on 90% of their second and ones, like all these things that don't add up to a modern offensive strategy. Anyways, who's next, Declan?
Let's go to Chancey, who I believe is braving the outdoors right now in North Dakota. Chancey, where are you at?
Out on the snowmobile trails, calling you guys today. So I did watch most of the game and then listen to some of it on the radio. But so I promised 16 weeks and I only got 14 because I missed the deer stand and the Christmas holiday. But I appreciate you guys' show. It's been great being on all year and talking about the purple. So a couple ideas on making them better for next year. One is having COVID end and getting fans in US Bank Stadium, because I do think the team, more than a lot of other teams in the NFL, does feed off the crowd noise. I think the defensive line, as porous as they were, would have had a higher sack total if the bank was filled up. So
yeah, dude, like remember the first game of the season when Aaron Rodgers comes into an empty US Bank Stadium and he's making, I think he got the Vikings to jump off sides twice in their own stadium with hard counts. And it was like, okay, yep, but that advantage is gone. And maybe even with veteran quarterbacks, it becomes a disadvantage for you.
Right. So here's my idea number 2. This one's a little out of the box. See, I'm trying to think of, do we not draft a quarterback or not? Forget that. I'm trying to think a little bit more out of the box to give you guys some new material here, right? I want to hire a new coaching position, and it's going to be called my 2-point conversion coordinator. And I'm going into next season, and I'm going to be the first team in the NFL to no longer kick extra points. It's not just Dan Bailey. I mean, that is leading into it, the fact that I can't watch any more kick sale left or right. But
he had one today. Oh my God.
Yeah, but let's just think about it. I mean, if you could get better at that than any other team, and you continually went for 2, that could give you a leg up in a lot of these games, and you could be an innovative team there. So that might be another idea on something just to do totally different, right? Just let's say, when they move those extra points back, they're getting more difficult. Forget it. We're not doing that anymore. If we can figure out a way to hit on 70% of our 2-point conversions, that would be a huge advantage for the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3, this is an old trick from a lot of sports, right? Forget Kirk, we can draft a guy. How about the old change of scenery situation? You hear it every once in a while, right? And I'm going to throw out a crazy idea. That team you were playing today, Kirk played for Michigan State. I say you call up Detroit and you offer Kirk for Mr. Stafford straight up. They both make a lot of money. The contracts are very comparable. Detroit hasn't done anything with them. They're, stuck in neutral. Maybe it's just the old situation where you go, let's just change the scenery for both guys. We send Kirk back to Michigan State, the state where he played in college. Stafford comes over here. I believe in Stafford. He's just been stuck in a poor organization his whole career where they can't support him. You unleash him with some weapons and a better support staff, that could be an answer. And that doesn't require all the other things and multiple algorithms we're talking about here. So what about something like that?
I will say that Stafford's always been intriguing, and that if he were to have gone to a different franchise from the get-go, if some of it's just if you get drafted by the Browns or the Lions, you're just screwed. If he were drafted by a more competent franchise, and I would put the Vikings, the Vikings have had much more in terms of resources and roster, that would be something I'd love to go run back 10 years ago. I don't know that he really drastically changes the landscape compared to Kirk in 2021, but
and
I'm all for reckless speculation.
And I don't want an expensive QB because if I get a Stafford or I get a Wentz or I keep Cousins, I still have to protect him. And then I'm not going to go out and get the guys that I need to protect him. That's why this is all a bit of a puzzle of how you put your salary structures together, Chancey.
Yeah.
And it's why I would be you're paying Cook now. Hunter wants to get paid. You're paying Cousins. You're paying this guy and that guy. At some point in time, you can't pay everybody because if Stafford is the QB here, he's going to get mauled too with this. Dakota Dozier can't block. He just can't.
I agree with you guys. I will say
one
thing about the draft idea. I would say before I ever went in the draft room, and I assume that every team does this anyway. You would just list out the quarterbacks, whether it's Zach Wilson or Fields or some, maybe if it's the NDSU kid. If you do believe in him and your scouts believe in him, you just have to have made the decision ahead of time that if he falls to us, we're taking him, period. It shouldn't be a decision that's made at the last minute, right? Mm-hmm. Or it should be a decision where you say, if he falls 2 spots ahead of us, he's there, we're going to do whatever it takes, right? That decision should be made a month ahead of time. It should be easy. And then otherwise, you're just moving on. You're not reaching for another guy because you're drafting quarterback no matter what. Right. You've only identified the guy you want. And if they're not there, you say, forget it, we're going to the guard. So, but
well, Chancey, enjoy the rest of your snowmobile venture today, and we'll talk to you again. We just for people, we're formulating plans to at least keep Ventline alive in some form during the off season for sure. For like some of the peak events, whether it's the draft or the schedule release and free agency, but we're formulating our plans for the off season, so we can get you on one of these other times.
That would be fun. Thank you guys for good work all year. Appreciate it. So
thanks, Chancey. Appreciate it, man. Hey, real quick.
Yep.
This comment on the screen here from Michael Harrington on YouTube. Vikings are a competent organization. Yes. Are they a championship organization? No. But dude, watch the Jets for 5 minutes. Like, that's an incompetent franchise. So there's, I don't know how many categories of franchises, but there's championship level franchises. The Vikings aren't on that level. There's winning and competitive and competent franchises. That's where the Vikings fall. They still have holes and they still have blind spots, drafting quarterbacks, offensive line. Like, there's definitely blind spots. But to say that they aren't a competent organization, I think is very inaccurate. Just want to throw it out.
They're competent. I don't know right now that they are as adaptable as they probably need to be. So, but that's not incompetent. That's just, are you adjusting? And I would say that right now, with the direction of this league, there's a case to be made that they don't adjust enough, and that's starting to become a problem because of, again, the salary cap. They are making decisions based on how they think life should go versus the reality of how it's actually going as far as the sport.
To Chancey's point too about Matthew Stafford and a possible trade or a contract, he does have an opt-out going into this next season, so he could opt out. I don't think he would, because he would make $33 million next season. But in his hypothetical world, so he's on the hook for $33 million next season. But in 2022, if you wanted to bail, and that's the Lions or the Vikings in this situation, it's only $6 million against the cap. I don't think I'd do this trade just because, even though I like Stafford more than Cousins, but I don't think Stafford elevates the Vikings more to where they need to be.
No, it's this all, to me, this all comes down to one thing. If you're going to change quarterbacks, and like Jimmy Garoppolo is another guy, although I don't think his money's guaranteed. People are going to throw out other names that are sort of like Phillip Rivers. Like, no, if you're going to change quarterbacks, it's got to be for a rookie scale contract guy with tons of upside and preferably mobility. That's the only, I'm not looking to just get rid of Kirk Cousins here. And I just want to also mention, because we spent a lot of time on offense, the defense is the biggest reason why the Vikings didn't win more games this year. And the defense has guys coming back, so they're going to take a step forward. But in an offensive league, and in a league where at the end of the game, your quarterback is the one with the ball in his hand. And when you watch these playoff games that are coming up, all right, it's not going to be a run and defensive, like the teams that run the ball and play the best defense. It's the teams with the best quarterbacks that also rush the passer the best on the other side that are going to make it through the bracket.
And if they did change QBs, I guess my question is this: would you then make that guy happy by relying and having confidence in what he can do? Because Cousins, they don't.
Yeah, and why would you not? It doesn't make sense.
But I mean, you've got Thielen and Jefferson and Irv Smith Jr. and Conklin. If I brought another older QB in, unless that guy was dirt cheap, you would basically have to say, we're going to do more to feature you at quarterback to make those guys look good than we did previously. This cannot be the Dalvin Cook show. He's really good and he deserves to carry the ball. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but we never had a discussion when he got that contract. We never said that he was not a really good player. Damn near great, probably. That wasn't our point. Our point was, what are you doing exactly as far as your intention for how you're going to run this offense, which we've now seen and which doesn't consistently make sense. So I don't, if Stafford came here, I think he would say, okay, so I'm handing the ball off a lot, huh? That still wouldn't make sense to him, and it shouldn't make sense.
And Maurice chimes in here on YouTube again. When you have a great running back, you lean toward running. And that's obviously what the Vikings are doing, but that doesn't win you a Super Bowl in 2020.
And do you really do it on 2nd and 18?
The Vikings do all the time.
No, I know they do, but I'm just saying when you break that statement down, right?
Yeah.
It's now 2nd and 18. You are backed up against it. What are we going to do? A gap power. Huh?
Just jam the rock.
Yeah, what? Excuse me?
Establish the run. All right, who's next, Declan?
Not
Vikings
working.
Net Line, recapping, but mostly looking forward, presented by Corona Hard Seltzer.
Let's go to our youngest Vikings fan, Michael, who's been pounding a Welch grape juice as well during this in the green room. Michael, what's going on,
I
buddy?
have. Nothing much.
Michael, how would you fix the Vikings going into 2021?
I would really keep what we're doing, but probably with our first round draft pick is get an offensive lineman. Because if you get an offensive lineman, you're taking a shot at upgrading. And then you got New England Patriots guard, I think that's coming out into free agency.
I like it.
Might be a little expensive, though. That's the problem again.
Yeah.
The cap space. Because it's coming down. Going down.
Yeah, if we had enough cap space, I'd say probably take a shot for J.J. Watt. Because he's a left end. And Danielle Hunter's a right end, so...
JJ Watt would be super fun. Michael, thanks for joining. We appreciate you being a regular here on Vikings Vent Line.
JJ Watt, Danielle Hunter, that'd be good.
I mean,
I love it.
I like it.
Yeah.
That would be
Thanks,
super fun. But you've got like if you only have, let's say, one big shot in free agency, depending on where the cap space shakes out, and you have one big shot in the draft because you don't have a second round draft pick, you basically have two poker chips to throw on the table to get a team that was 7-9, in addition to guys coming back on defense, a team that was 7-9, and had holes all over the place, to being a Super Bowl contender. What do you do with those poker chips?
I'm predicting right now that the head coach is going to request that the first pick that the Vikings have be used on a 3 technique to play alongside Michael Pierce. That's my guess. He will. I think I 100% think that he will request that first round pick is used on either a 3 tech or a defensive end. That's my guess. I think he's happy at cornerback, right? And you can't draft a corner again first round.
I wouldn't shock me.
Safety, I think they'll take one within the first 3 rounds, but I don't think they would use a first round pick on a safety.
Dude, what if
he's going to want to go defense though?
If Patrick Surtain is sitting there in the wherever the Vikings are drafting, like 14th or something,
I like that kid. I like him a
you
lot.
know, Mike Zimmer is going to be banging on the door of that war room. All right, who's next, Declan?
God, let's go to Braden. Braden, you're on Vikings Event Line. What's up, buddy?
Hey, afternoon, guys. How's it going?
What's up, Braden? How would you fix the Vikings?
Well, so just to be clear, like since it's kind of going back and forth this episode, are we doing next year or like previous, like 2-3 years down the line?
I mean, we're looking at, I would say 2021, but a window of like the next 3 to 5 years, if you so choose.
Okay, because like obviously Zimmerman, Spielman, they're not going anywhere next year.
Right.
So my thing is, I don't know if it's really been addressed yet, is I'm all for picking up offensive guard and free agency. Like the guy said, Dunny, Sheriff, I think they're going to be a little too expensive. There is a few others available. If we have to backload someone's contract like we did with Cousins, it's what we got to do. But as for the draft, what I'm thinking is because of what I've seen, and I think personally we should be calling the Jags or the Jets. And even though they want their 2, we should be swapping for like 2 or 3 of those middle round picks. Not middle round, but like 2nd and 3rd round picks.
Yeah, I think. Well, I like where you're going with this. So you're saying essentially you're looking to stockpile additional 2nd and 3rd round picks so you can beef up your roster with more volume of picks as opposed to.
Even so, if we get the 21st pick, I know you guys aren't going to like it, but like Judd's not huge on Hunter. Mackey, you're not. I don't know if you think Hunter's going to come back. You guys said maybe DT for a line. I think Gregory Rosa might be available. So take that, and then with that early 3rd round pick you get, go O guard or O tackle with Alex Leatherford, and you pick the O guard up in free agent.
I like Braden's already doing deep dives into names here that I have not studied yet, and I love it.
Cleveland stay at right guard in your world then?
No, you could put him to left tackle because we all know Riley Reef and all the people are going to be gone. I don't want to talk about that anymore. We've talked about that all year.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, then after that, you're going to have a few more picks, and then you address possibly your safety, Andre Cisco. He might go late because of the injury. He has the talent.
Braden, I think everything you just said sort of starts with, and thank you. We'll jump into some other callers here too. Thank you for jumping on. Always brings the insight. The Danielle Hunter situation is one that I don't think people are talking enough about. That Ian Rappaport report before he decided to have the season-ending neck surgery, where Ian Rappaport floated out like, hey, he's considering season-ending neck surgery. Oh, and the Vikings are going to, this is back in like September. Mm-hmm. Oh, and the Vikings are going to have a big situation on their hands when he comes back because he wants to be he wants to be the highest paid defensive player in the league or whatever the specifics were.
Yep, that was it.
Or he'll hold out and demand a trade to another team. Like, that's not just going to go away. So you're dealing with two things, trying to figure out, is he healthy enough to come back and play at the same level? Mm-hmm. And B, will he do it for his very team-friendly salary that he's been playing on since he signed that contract? Now, you could say, listen, he signed the contract. So you play on the contract you signed. But
say, see ya, bye, thanks.
Right. So if he puts you in a spot where, listen, you're going to have to pay me $10 million more. I think he makes like 16 a year or something, 14 or 16. If he wants $25 million a year, you're going to have to decide, okay, well, that prevents us from getting an offensive lineman in free agency. It would be nice just to get him back at the old salary and then add to your team. But that whole discussion is such a can of worms that has yet to really be opened up at all. And it will in the next 2 or 3 months before the league year starts.
And to be clear, when it comes to Hunter, I like him a lot. What I'm saying is what you can't afford to pay him. And he can. So if Cook had held out going into the last year of his contract basically tolls then, and he goes from being a unrestricted free agent to restricted. So the Vikings had him. He had to show up. Hunter's got time left. So if you say, no, we're not going to pay you, he can say, I just had surgery on my neck. I'm a Pro Bowl player the last time that you saw me, and I'm playing for dirt cheap. I am not going to play for dirt cheap. So he actually could say, see ya, I'm not going to play. So this to me is not comparable to what Cook had, because in my opinion, when it came to Dalvin, the leverage was in the Vikings' hands. When it comes to Dayle, it's in Hunter's hands. Mm-hmm. And so we need to accept the fact that if the Vikings balk and they say, we're not going to pay you and we're not going to trade you, that come the start of training camp 2021, he's not going to show up. Mm-hmm. But I like him a lot. He's a great player. Like, don't say I don't like him. That's not true.
He is. But like, I mean, this is where I'm at with him. There's questions about his health. Yeah. And then if he's going to play hardball with a contract, that's another high maintenance thing. As great as he is, if a team said, we'll give you a first round pick for him, it's a no brainer. I take it and I run. Mm-hmm. If it's a second round pick, I think about it. And people are going to say, well, my God, like, who are your pass rushers? I don't know. But I also know that you don't win a Super Bowl by paying a non-top 5 quarterback as much as you're paying Kirk, and by paying a defensive player more than any other non-quarterback in the NFL. Correct. If that's what he wants.
Yeah.
So who's up next? Declan?
Let's go to our sports bro, Nick. Nick, what's up, buddy?
Nick.
What's going on, guys?
Son?
Before we fix the Vikings, can I say that the only takeaway from that game was, have you ever seen 2 NFL quarterbacks play so good and thrive when it is garbage time and meaningless and pad their stats? They're just like the Spider-Man looking at each other. So
they should replay that game on NFL's whatever. Is there like an ESPN Classic channel left that they rerun old games on? We need like garbage time classics. Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins lighting it up today, baby.
Or the NFL Network top 10. Just put them on the list. 1 and 2. How we fix the team: get a time machine, go back to the day after we beat the Saints with that fluke win, and don't extend either of the top 3 guys, their quarterback, GM, coach. You had no need to do any of this. No need. They all could have played for their contracts this year. It doesn't make any sense. As a Vikings fan, think how good you would be feeling right now, even with this pick. If you knew, all right, well, bad season, but the coach is going to be gone, the GM's going to be gone, the quarterback's going to be gone. We can do whatever we want. It's a clean slate. I would just be ecstatic. But now it's like everybody knows we're going to be 10-6, maybe 11-5 next year. And we're always going to be teetering on this 10-6 to 7-9. It's not fun. It's not fun, man.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And, but then the other, I think what people would say is, okay, but be careful what you ask for, because if you start to fire some of these guys and then you go draft a quarterback and you whiff and things erode, how willing are you to risk 10 years of Jets or Browns level futility? I don't think it would get that bad. I don't think the risk is as great as some people think when it comes to like moving off a quarterback or a coach. But like, how willing are you to risk 10 years of just absolute garbage if you whiff on these things?
You've been saying it the whole year. We want a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. I'll risk it all. It's obvious, man. I'd risk it all. So now I'm more of just a Kevin Stefanski and a Browns fan, seeing the coach we let get away.
Yeah.
Watch him
playoff coach
a little
now.
bit. Yeah, exactly. Where Mike Zimmer isn't. So even O-line first round, I'm looking for my quarterback in 2 years, even if for the O-line to help him in the next 2 years. And like you guys already said, Kirk, they never really gave him everything. Granted, like weapons wise, he has everything, but O-line wise, he's never had everything and never actually got to cook. So hey, it's just a failed experiment all around. The contract should have been done this year. So
yeah,
what can you do?
Yeah. Sports Bro Nick, thanks for jumping on.
See you, Sports.
Real quick too, for those of you still hanging out with us on YouTube, youtube.com/Purple Daily Podcast. If you're watching on either Score North Facebook or Twitter, we would love for you to click the subscribe button on our YouTube page so you can get those videos, and you can click the little bell for notifications that let you know when we go live. And you'll get those daily Vikings discussions delivered into your YouTube feed. You can also find Purple Daily anywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and scorenorth.com.
Do you know what I don't get off Nick's point? I don't get why exactly. So they extended Cousins last March to reduce his salary cap hit for 2020 because they were basically so up against and over the cap. Here's what I don't get. Why didn't they sit down and discuss how Mike likes to use his QBs and basically acknowledge the fact that they were bringing in young cornerbacks, who we knew would struggle. Like their struggles were the least surprising thing, and they improved, I think, but we expected that they wouldn't be good. And for a lot of games at different times, they weren't. Okay. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you have said, okay, we can extend Kirk here and buy ourselves some salary cap space for 2020, which might be a dicey year. We really don't know, which, by the way, to say that sometimes is absolutely fine. It's just being truthful, at least internally. Or, let's try and create salary cap space from elsewhere, but not with Kirk. Because Nick is right. Like this would be painless and seamless if you could have said, we took a shot 3 years ago at we thought was a Super Bowl recipe led by this QB. And you know what? We were wrong. But that's fine, because now it's done, and we can now hit the reset. I am a little bit confused why that conversation, in particular with Spielman, Zimmer, the Wilfs, Brzezinski, was not had to find a different way to create some cap space. Why did it have to be Kirk? And because you knew the second that contract got signed, you were basically tying yourself in again to a guy who the head coach, I'll go back to saying it, in my opinion, really does not trust or value like the contract does.
Yeah. Here's another thing too. When we talk about the contract, again, it's like, this is what's tough is you can acknowledge that Kirk Cousins is a very good NFL quarterback. And at his best, when all things are perfect around him, he can play at even close to an elite level. We've seen stretches of that, right? Is he able to carry a team to a winning record and playoffs, etc., when things aren't perfect around him? And historically, in the 6 years he's been a starter, the answer has been no. And so when we have these discussions, the number one thing that always gets thrown back at us is, you guys, what are you complaining about? The going rate for a franchise quarterback is what it is.
Right.
Average annual value of like $30 million a year.
Right.
To which I would say, okay, well, if everybody jumped off a bridge, are you jumping off a bridge too, right? How many times did your parents tell you that when you were a kid? I'm going to give you a list. Once we get past like the Pat Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers part of this, like the guys who are making the top dollar. Actually, Deshaun Watson starting, I think next year is up in that $40 million range too. But here are the guys that are getting it's just the market value going rate number for a quarterback. And you tell me where these franchises are at right now. Okay. Jared Goff and the Rams are, fighting for their lives to get in. And I think the Rams are probably, I think they were Super Bowl contenders like a month ago. Wouldn't shock me if they made a run, but they're in kind of a tough spot because they had to pay Jared Goff $33 million. They had to let a couple of weapons go, right?
But I also know in that case, at least, that the coach actually thought Goff was good.
And they also surrounded Goff with a system.
Like if Mike signed off on Kirk, right? And be like, I love Kirk and I'm going to use, I'd be like, okay, I'll back off now.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is he doesn't. It's really clear.
But again, so this exercise is non-elite quarterbacks that are making the going rate of, 20% of your overall team salary cap. Carson Wentz and the Eagles. Where's that franchise at right now? Total disaster.
Trying to trade Carson Wentz, which they're not going to be able to do.
Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Now, even if he was healthy, I don't think that team, I thought that team was going to be better going in.
But he's franchised at least. Like that could be done tomorrow.
Yep, but he still eats up a huge percentage.
Sure, but at least you're not stuck forever. This feels far more stuck.
Matt Ryan and the Falcons. Where's that franchise at? Because they're paying, again, a non-elite quarterback going rate, market rate. And there's more on this list too. But I just think you got to be really careful. If you're going to give a non-elite quarterback the money that these teams are giving these guys, and the Vikings are included, you better be doing everything you can to empower and surround that quarterback with the resources, with the blocking and everything. And if you're not, then what are you doing with that money? It doesn't make sense. You might as well just put a handoff, like a jugs machine back there to hand the ball off and throw slant routes. So who's next, Declan? Vikings vent line here, fixing the Vikings for 2021.
Let's go to Alex. Alex, you're on Vikings vent line.
Hey, fellas. Glad to be back on the show. How many, can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. How many times has, as you're saying, the offense is a problem? How many times has Kirk Cousins actually had the lead in the fourth quarter and defense is blown? Defense this year, to me, is the real reason why this season was a disaster, and once again, the season's a disaster, and they go 7-9. Typical Vikings disaster of a season. I think the one thing that aggravated me the most today was they had a chance to play their young offensive linemen, and they simply did not. They could have moved Ezra to left tackle, moved Chris Hinton in the guard, or Udi. They could have played him. But then Gary Kubiak came out in the middle of the week, says that Rashad Hill deserves to start at left tackle. We know who Rashad is. He's a great swing, come in, back up the other offensive lineman. And I think the offense is – I don't think the offense is the problem with this team. I think they need to throw a little bit more, maybe balance it out a little bit more. But getting rid of Danielle Hunter will be in the same situation that they're in this year, no pass rush. They need players like Danielle Hunter to generate a pass rush. So I think that is the biggest issue is they need to shore up that defensive line and shore up the trenches, because if you don't win the trenches, you don't win.
Yeah, I think this is where you have to get creative with your cap, right? If Danielle Hunter wants a bunch more money and he's going to be a pain in the ass and you're unsure about his neck, what I would lean on if I'm Rick Spielman is, okay, we have to swallow hard on this and this sucks. We're going to have to trade Danielle Hunter now. But as a franchise and as a general manager, we've been really good at finding edge rushers. I mean, look at whether it's through trades or free agency or draft picks, Everson Griffin, Brian Robinson. I think Brian Robinson was drafted the first year Spielman was in the front office, although he may not have been around for that 2007 draft. Judd would have to think back to that. Danielle Hunter, even Adenabo is a pretty good pass rusher. So if you like, Derek Falvey says this with the Twins, that if you're good at developing one position and he's good at developing pitching, then you should spend your free agency money on the other things. Like go get a Nelson Cruz in free agency because you know how to develop pitching for cheap. Theo Epstein did this with the Chicago Cubs and Red Sox. He really couldn't develop pitching. So guess what? They developed hitters and position players, and then they went and spent their money on pitching. So for the Vikings, if they feel like they can develop pass rushers, then I wouldn't necessarily pay Danielle Hunter $25 million when I can go draft the next guy. So
there also comes a time where they're going to have to sit down and make decisions about who gets paid. Cousins got paid. Cook got paid. They're paying. So you can't just keep paying. So at some point, for the betterment of the franchise, you have to decide who gets paid and when. And that's why this is a league that is set up for essentially pendulum swings. Most teams cannot just be good consistently. They're going to go up and down. And that's why the Vikings are going to have to look at their young players and veterans and start to decide who's going to get paid. Because if you're paying Cousins and you're paying Cook, and now, you know what, Danielle Hunter, here's yours. Well, then I don't have enough to pay that next group of guys that I want to hold on to. So it's a balancing act, but this goes back to what I'm saying is this franchise needs to decide where it's at and what its philosophy is on approaching how to try and win a Super Bowl, not just how do we win 9 games here, 10 games here. Oh, we're down to 8. Now we're at 11.
They kind of did that with the cornerbacks, though. Like Mike Zimmer knows he's good at developing cornerbacks. He's like, I'm not paying you guys what you guys want, so I'll go with rookies. I think you need at least one elite pass rusher, to make it, because we don't have any this year. I mean, Stafford could have had a dinner back in the pocket today, So it's just, I understand what you're saying, and I think you need to pay at least. I think every team needs to have one great pass rusher, a great quarterback. Quarterbacks. See, to me, the thing with the quarterbacks is supply and demand. How many people in the world can be a high-quality NFL quarterback? Now, Grant Cousins is not like Mahomes level, but he's, maybe one of 13 people who can play at the quarterback position well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Alex, hey, thanks for jumping on, man. Appreciate your questions here as we look to fix the Vikings going into 2021.
And he just went down the path that goes back to the Dalvin Cook extension. Who do you want to pay? Quarterback. Okay, that's cool. Defensive end. Okay, cool too. Cornerbacks. I get that one. No matter how good Cook is, it doesn't fit into the really wise move to say, and now I'm going to make my running back rich. Like Dalvin Cook just had as good of a year as he can. He was outstanding, phenomenal, Pro Bowl, All Pro, all of that, right? They're 7-9.
It's a luxury to pay a running back, and the Vikings didn't really have that luxury.
He's like a fourth car,
good.
Right?
Yeah.
He's like, I got this fourth car. I don't drive it much, but it's great.
By the way, Zach Olson chiming in here in the YouTube comment sections. Let's hear a list now of franchises with non-elite quarterbacks with cheap non-rookie contracts, meaning the going rate for quarterbacks is what it is, right? And I think what you're getting at, Zach, is once a quarterback comes off his rookie contract, whether he's elite or not, if he's a starting quarterback, then he automatically gets to make like 15 to 20% of the salary cap, to which I say, then refuse to pay it. You don't have to give a guy now the Vikings gave Kirk an extension because they were trying to flatten out his salary for this year because they thought they could, clear some space and be contenders. And then COVID hits and Michael Pierce opts out and they just got unlucky. But what I am saying, just to be 100% clear, is if you draft a quarterback and you play out the 5 years like the Bears have with Mitch Trubisky, and he is not a definitive top 10 quarterback that you're looking to build the next decade around, say goodbye and draft again. That's what I'm saying. What's the worst that can happen? Like Christian Ponder went 10-6 despite the fact that he was garbage because the Vikings built a great roster around him. And back again.
And if you think that you have that QB, which the Vikings sort of do, okay, his name has to be atop the marquee for every show. It has to be, or you don't do it. Like if you're going to say, we need a good but not great QB who I like and I can rely on and I don't hate his guts because he doesn't fumble or something like that, that's fine. But then you go find that guy because they're there too. But if I'm going to pay a quarterback elite QB money, Phil, he needs to be on the top of my marquee for every movie that I show in my house.
Yep.
Like he has to be.
Yep.
And it's a fair thing.
Who do we got next, Dex?
Let's go to a Coney. Did I get it right this time?
No, Cooney.
Yeah. You got him.
God.
We're gonna play a game where Okuni just calls in every single day until Dex gets his
Well,
name.
then you get it. Yeah.
He'll get it soon if we do that. But I just want to say Happy New Year's and thanks for having me on.
You too.
You too, Okuni.
And okay, so this off season is going to be really important. I think what we need to focus on is the trenches, like everyone's been saying, offensive line and defensive line. I mean, people were just running all over us this year. I mean, it sucked that Michael Pierce opted out, but if Daniil comes back and Michael Pierce comes back, who else do we have? I mean, Odenebo's good, but he was supposed to be the guy to step up this year, and he didn't, you know? And then who's that third guy? Is it Shamar Stephen or Jaleel Johnson?
The interior of the line has to change completely.
Exactly.
Has to.
Exactly. You know, and then on the offensive side, I mean, Garrett Bradbury and our rookie, I forget his name, they're getting pushed all over the place. You know, how many times have we seen it on 3rd and 5 or 2nd and 5, and then they, you know, blitz, and then you see Garrett Bradbury in Kirk Cousins' pocket before, like, within 2 seconds, you know?
Dozier, too.
And don't even get me started on
He
Dakota
sacked
Dozier.
Cousins like 3 times by himself this season. It was impressive.
Starting the game, Kirk Cousins tripped over him twice in the first 2 plays. Like, how does that happen? You know, I'm like, can't somebody else like Colin Hinton start instead of Dakota Dozier? I mean, we have all these rookies that I would love to see play. I mean, I didn't see I forget his name on defense. Rookie 70. I forget his name. No, he's on the line.
He was hurt.
DJ Wanham?
No, not DJ Wanham. Lynch.
James, yeah.
Oh, we got
James
Lynch's. Yeah, we got a ton of
I
Lynch's
think
on this team.
he would be a good, you know, guy to start alongside Pierce. But those 2 positions have to, you know, be where we start. And then, I mean, I have to ask you guys with Anthony Harris, Eric Wilson, and Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr has a really big contract. Anthony Harris is coming up on the franchise tag, and Eric Wilson is coming up on a contract year. You know, who would you guys keep, let go, like, I guess kill? I mean, Mary kill.
Eric Wilson, I try and keep. Barr is gone. I clear cap space there. Harris gone. Like, I can't. Yeah. He made 11.3 mil on the franchise tag and had a terrible year. Good guy, and I do think in a defense that has cornerbacks who you can rely on, he could be a good player, but I can't pay him. So of those 3, the only one that I really put a priority on keeping is Wilson.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I really think Kirk Cousins needs to take a pay cut this year to help out the team if he's a team guy, just so we can have a little bit more room to possibly get, you know, some veteran help on the O-line, because we need bigger guys. We can't just keep getting pushed around like that. If we can get at least one guy for offensive guard, I think the offense would do fine. We don't need anything perfect. I mean, Kirk has shown this year that he can move around a little bit. If we can have a confident O-line that can give them some time just to sling that ball around. I mean, we have weapons for days. I mean, can we please fix the O-line this year, Rick Spielman? I think Rick Spielman's job is going to rely on what he does this offseason, because we don't have the draft picks. I mean, I know he's a whiz and he can find later draft picks and find good guys. You know, Rob Brzezinski is like a cap genius. I don't know. But this offseason is really going to be key for him and Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer's got to just change his whole philosophy and start thinking aggressive. Offensively, we got to be way more aggressive. And defensively, I mean, we barely blitzed this year. I mean, is that just me, or do you guys agree?
On the blitzing front, I'd have to go back and look. On everything else you're talking about, I think we're pretty much in lockstep here, Okuni. Thank you for coming on. Hope to see you again.
Problem.
Happy New Year, man.
On Vikings Vent Line here. I think the offensive line thing is really interesting, because if Garrett Bradbury is a bust and you have 2 open guard spots, I don't know that you can just fix that in one offseason. I think a lot of the offensive line success is predicated on not only nailing let's say a first round pick or free agent, let's say a free agent left guard or something, but also in nailing the Garrett Bradbury pick from 2 drafts ago. And right now I wouldn't call him a complete bust yet, but he hasn't panned out to the level that they had probably hoped when they identified him as the most NFL ready starting center in the first round 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'd agree. And so I guess my question becomes guard-wise too. Do you like Dakota Dozier has to be replaced? He just has to be. Now, are you going to cut Reef, which I think you're probably going to do, and switch Cleveland to left tackle? Like there's again going to be a lot of potential moving parts there. Defensively on the blitz question, I think Zim, I don't think loves to blitz, period. But two is I don't think he's going to blitz a lot because he didn't trust the back end. That's the problem too, is like Harrison Smith appeared to not have a great year at times, but I can't decide if he wasn't playing well or the rest of the defense was just so exposed that the ordinary freelance stuff that he can do so well couldn't be done.
Yeah.
And so he still tried it and it didn't work, or what? The defense just broke down so badly. But the one thing I know that without a shadow of a doubt, that it's clear to me as the problem with Dozier at left guard, the one thing that we know is the interior of that defensive line was brutal. And Jaleel Johnson and Shamar Stephen really can't play. And they might be backups, don't know on that. But I can tell you that both of those guys, if they are starting on opening day of 2021, something has gone really wrong there. They can't. So, like, to me, that's a non-debatable. They have to be replaced. This team has had a history of what, Phil? Good nose tackles and three techs, right? Like, they've had some really good ones. This is as bad a combination inside, I think, as I've seen since I started to cover this team full time in 2005. It was awful.
Hey, I don't know what all these other starting offensive guards did today. Like Damian Lewis from Seattle has been pretty bad with penalties, but Dakota Dozier came into today's game leading the NFL among guards in pressures allowed, and he had allowed he had taken the third most penalties. And I know he had at least one penalty.
He took one today. Cleveland had one, he had one, and O'Neal had one.
So he may finish first in pressures allowed and second in penalties taken among guards.
And here's the maddening thing. They saw him play in a backup role last season and deemed him worthy of competing for a starting job.
And they ran him out there for the whole season.
I know.
This is bonkers, man.
But explain, like that's a thought process I just can't get my head around. God. It's like you saw this guy struggle in short stints in 2019. You gave him a chance to win the job, which he clearly did by default in training camp. Mm-hmm. And then, as you just said, you ran him out there all year long. Because, well, and here's the sad thing. You partially did that because your right guard before Cleveland stepped into that role was so bad. It made your left guard look good.
And so, in the NFL, you might drop back, 40, 45 times in a game, and a bad day at the office for an offensive lineman, let's say it's 45 dropbacks. A bad day at the office is if you allow 4 or 5 pressures. That's considered bad. It's a little bit like umping in Major League Baseball, right? If you miss a call at first base, well, you might only miss like 1 per game or 2 per game, but that's bad compared to other umpires.
Right.
And if you compare it just to some of the other guards who played a majority of snaps, for instance, I'm just going to pick some random guys out here. Like Wyatt Teller for the Cleveland Browns allowed 10 pressures all season. Who's another guy here? Ben Powers from Baltimore allowed 7 pressures all season in Baltimore. So we're talking about like 30 or 40 more pressures, just immediate up the middle. And those up the middle pressures, the Vikings don't have a quarterback like the Baltimore Ravens do. Guess what? If Ben Powers allows some pressure up the middle, Lamar Jackson might get to scoot out of the pocket and still make a play, right? Kirk Cousins does not, because he's just not able to.
Oh, he gets hit instantly.
Correct. All right, Dex.
Let's go to CJ. CJ, you're on Vikings event line. What's up, buddy? Oh,
hey, CJ. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Still can't. Let's put CJ in the waiting room here.
For sure. Hey, Bob from Pennsylvania has one last thing that he wants to say.
By all means, please.
Bob, what's up?
Judd, you notice that emblem?
Judd, Mets hat.
The emblem on the top of the hat?
I like
Are you a
it.
Mets fan?
No. I'm not. Oh, to Oscar Madison, my man. Odd couple. He always wore the Mets hat.
Why do half of us have Mets hats?
I can respect that. I can
So,
respect that.
Not a Mets
All right,
fan.
here's my other
TV fan.
All right, Os. Hey, here's my other point. Since Kirk Cousins throws the ugliest screen pass in the NFL, why don't we draft a guy who throws the most beautiful screen pass in college, and his name is Mac Jones.
Wow.
Number 10, Fran Tarkenton's number, by the way.
Wow.
SEC quarterback, similar, the same league that Tarkenton was in. Anyway, he also throws a great deep ball. He's a winning quarterback in big games. Nobody ever talks about him. And I'll tell you what else he does. He takes a 3-step drop and he gets rid of the ball no matter what. And that's it. Not like Cousins, who's in the shotgun. And, he'll take a 4-step drop after he's been in the shotgun. So I like Mac Jones. I think the Vikings could develop him. Their defensive line, a lot of uncertainty. I mean, I don't see them being a major contender in 2 years. They're going to have to restructure things. So, hey, let's draft Mac Jones.
Bob,
what do you think?
I'm here for it.
Right round, yeah.
If it leads to, I think if it leads to 10 screen passes to Dalvin Cook, then you're getting your money's worth out of your running back every game. 10 every game.
Yeah.
160 screen passes a year to Dalvin. Actually, it's more like 130 because he's going to miss 3. But I'm here
for
Madison. Amen.
Like Madison.
Great
what
stuff.
about, all right, man. Happy New Year.
I like the hat, Bob.
Bob
Thanks,
coming
Bob.
in wearing just a Mets hat, and his hot tub.
He had more on than the Mets. He had shorts on. He showed us.
I don't know.
We got one more here to wrap this.
Our guy Paul Skull, are you in Paulford? Are you in the deer stand right now? Well, we can't hear you.
No, we can. He's whispering.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh no, we can't hear him.
No, we can't.
We can't hear him.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I thought I heard something from him.
No, we can't hear him too. I wonder if we're just having technical issues.
Might be. We might be.
Actually, can we bring Pulford back on? Can you just like air dry your take on the screen?
We got the TJ Fleck thumbs up.
Skull.
Oh, okay. All right.
I love it, man.
That or a safety.
Right. We'll try it. This won't be. We will do more Vikings vent lines between now and week 1 next year. We're still formulating.
I hope so. We got to have some serious draft discussion.
100%
agency.
Actually,
go ahead, Phil.
I was just gonna say we're sort of we've been emailing back and forth today, sort of laying out the schedule, and we will begin mock draft Mondays, maybe even tomorrow. Maybe we do, or maybe we do our normal Viking statements tomorrow, and then we unveil mock draft Mondays next week. We'll see.
So how far was the potential fall of the draft pick because of today's thrilling, exciting win?
So they are 14th right now, and I believe they can get up to 13th if the Niners lose.
Okay, and if they had lost, they might have been around 10. Is that right?
And there was like a 1% chance they would get 10.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it didn't happen. And also, Justin
what's
Fields,
the worst case here, though? So if it's 14, the worst case.
I think 14 is the worst case.
Okay.
What about Justin Fields?
Justin Fields is down to I think 7th or 8th on Tankathon's mock draft. Right now.
He is.
Yeah.
So here's
here's
Tankathon. I'm just gonna let me share this real quick for the.
Was that before the semifinal game?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a.
I mean, that was
question. I mean, he
6 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was a hell of a performance.
Can you guys see this?
Yeah, I can see it. Good.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is what Tankathon.com.
Oh, Detroit. That's not good, Dex.
They've got Zach. This has to be before he threw 6 touchdown passes, right?
Yeah.
So Zach Wilson going number 2.
Wilson moved up to
Jamar Chase.
Trey Lance at 9. Oh, okay. John Elway again.
Ouch. So we have 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10.
Keep going.
And then the Vikings taking edge rusher. Quiddy Pay from
Michigan.
Yeah.
How about that? I told edge rusher or 3-tech.
Mac Jones, quarterback number 5, going to Washington. Can I get a 6th one? Nope, no more.
Look like it.
Do they have a 2nd round?
Yeah,
they do. They do.
Oh yeah, they do.
They've got the Vikings. The Vikings don't have a 2nd round pick. Do they have a 3rd round? Yes, they do. It's amazing. All right, so they've got the Vikings in the 3rd round taking.
Yep, they took
defensive. So
first 2 picks.
2 defensive players in the
Zim,
first 2 picks.
The will of Zim. Zim says you're taking a 3 technique and a defensive end, and I don't care what else you do.
Amazing. Any final words from you guys here on the last regular season edition of Vikings Vent Line?
It's been fun. Thank you. We appreciate the fact that we've had that room seems to be filled most of the time. And the one thing that has impressed me is great takes. And I'm totally sincere. I think the majority of the opinions and takes are really spot on and really good. And I appreciate the conversation as opposed to just not, us taking a take and then not going back and forth. It's been fun to have a dialogue with the people that have been on.
Yeah. And by the way, just to answer a question here, looks like Karuna on YouTube says, when is the next podcast? Tomorrow. We're going to keep this thing rolling daily, baby.
Full strength, baby.
Keep this thing
going.
Yeah,
you're back. You're back tomorrow.
Viking statements. And by the way, judging by some of the responses on the polls and tweets I put out the last couple of days, zero rust on this guy sitting out the last couple of weeks. Zero rust. But yeah, to echo what Judd's been saying, we really appreciate everyone who has discovered this show, whether it's through Vikings Vent Line or just our daily Purple Daily discussions. So Judd and I have been doing a show together for 7 years. Mackey and Judd, you can find our other show, Mackey and Judd, via podcast, Apple, Spotify, and scorenorth.com. But we decided before week one to take what has traditionally been a radio call-in show and use the 2020 word of the year pivot to more of a YouTube and video-centric version.
For our culture.
And, for our culture, that is correct.
It's been good for our culture here.
Circle back on that notion, but and it's been super fun, and I think we've seen the show grow quite a bit, and so we've connected with people that probably wouldn't have found us if we were just doing a show on AM 1500 Score North Radio.
It's all you kids out there.
All you whippersnappers.
All you young kids out there. We appreciate you.
I see Judd trimmed the Santa Claus beard at some point here too.
Went to the barber on Wednesday. It was way out of control. And so, yeah, I got it trimmed up, but it's not gone. I mean, it's still there and it's growing back. So,
do you get the straight? Is it the straight razor safe?
No, he cut it.
No, just trimmed it. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, it took a lot of work.
I don't know how that works.
It takes a lot of work.
Declan's been growing a Vikings playoff beard for over a year now, actually.
Yeah, a wild playoff beard.
Yeah, I'm
very excited.
Hey, new captain.
New Jared Spurgeon, shocking. Write that down, boys. I got another. Write that down.
Ding.
Which, by the way, some foreshadowing as we plan out 2021 Purple Daily. Write that down. Might be making an expansion. Just gonna say,
and I want to add a new statistical category to write that down that I think you both you guys and the listeners will like.
Because we did
lose be like wins above replacement.
Doubles and
No,
triples.
it's not war. It's not war.
Because
that might be a good one.
Because we used to do doubles, triples, homers, and it got too complicated.
Should I just full on slugging percentage?
Yeah.
Should I just tell you what it is?
Yeah, why not? You just told the rest of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's called hitting for the cycle. So if you make 3 predictions that are all quantifiable within the week of write that down and all of them hit, you hit for the cycle.
Okay.
So we'd have to attach the prediction to the week that it was made.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
We can make that happen. I think sort of color code them,
because then you're trying to hit for cycles. So then you have all 3 that come off the board, and you could have a new.
What I don't. We'll have a full discussion about.
I
this.
spray the ball around the park.
What I don't want to happen.
Tony Gwynn.
I don't want there to be like excessive hunting of bunt singles.
Correct.
So I almost feel like for it to happen, there has to be at least one home run in the mix if you're going for a cycle. But we can have this discussion.
Yeah. No, the Twins will play in the second inning.
Declan was going to do 3 bunt singles the same week that we put the cycle in. Didn't you know that?
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Oh my god.
All right, we'll dive into that. We'll bring it to the
thanks, Bulford's goal.
With Bulford.
He said,
thanks got it right on
for the fun this year, you gents. It was a blast. It was fun.
It has been. It was super fun. And like I said, we're going to waste 0 time. Starting tomorrow, we're going to continue with discussions about how to fix this franchise. And we're already looking at the combine, free agency. We've got our scouting glasses on. Declan's going to start doing Dex film reviews, probably on Mackey and Judd, but stick with us. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys next time on Purple Daily.